I'm Noor, and I'm one of the founders of a search engine for fair and sustainable fashion. It's a platform that I started together with two friends to make it easier for everyone to shop more sustainably. Today I'm here to talk to you about being an ethical consumer and how that can help you to change the fashion industry. And also, so I'm going to talk to you about the power of being an ethical consumer when trying to change the fashion industry, and what you can do to be a more ethical consumer. The fashion industry is, as you probably know, a horrible polluting industry that is also exploiting people and animals. For example, 10% of global carbon emissions is because of fashion. Every second, a truckload of textile waste is dumped into a landfill. And less than 1% of all clothing is produced fair trade. Well, you might not all know these details, but you might have glimpsed a headline here or there, like garment workers facing destitutions after fashion brands cancel orders. This was a headline you saw a lot at the start of COVID, when many brands had to close their stores and canceled orders that actually already had been made, leaving the garment workers that made these orders without any pay, and because they already had very little savings because they made very little money to begin with, facing very dire situations. You might think when you read these kind of things, and you might think, what is the point in me trying to be a more ethical consumer? After all, you have these huge companies polluting and exploiting, and you're just a single person. How can just you by yourself make a difference? I understand how you feel. And to be honest, I feel like this myself a lot. When I read online how the parent company of Zara has made more profit than ever, how Boohoo and Fashion Nova had so many scandals this year but still are so popular, I really feel like my personal efforts and the efforts that I have with my platform actually don't really matter that much. But we shouldn't be led by these kind of feelings. Because first of all, we're even more than you think. And second of all, we are making an impact. We've already accomplished so much. And if we can keep it up, we can really change the fashion industry. You can already make a difference by shopping from sustainable brands, or shopping secondhand, or boycotting brands that are known for their unsustainable production. By just buying from their conscious collection and asking how and by whom the clothing was made, and keeping them accountable. Take Rana Plaza, for example. Rana Plaza was a garment factory in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is one of the largest clothing exporters in the world, known for their cheap labor and bad working conditions. In April 2013, the Rana Plaza building collapsed. The building had been unsafe for a long time, with huge cracks in the ceilings, barred windows, and fire escapes that were sealed off on purpose. On the day of the collapse, many people asked if they could be let outside, but they were forced to stay inside and work. When the building collapsed, over 1,000 people lost their lives. 2,500 people were injured, some for life. This horrible news was world news. It was in the papers everywhere. And people were outraged when they found out that the clothing that they had in their own closet was actually made in these kind of factories. Something had to change. The Accord of Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh was brought into life. And NGOs and global trade unions pushed brands that produced in Bangladesh to sign this accord. And many signed this because of the global outrage. Because of this accord, a lot of things changed in Bangladesh. 90% of the safety hazards that were found by the inspectors of the accord are now eliminated. And this is all because of this global outrage. And of course, yes, they still don't get living wages and they still produce in an unsustainable way, but this has a huge impact on the lives of the people there. Earlier I said that you're not alone, and I have the numbers to back it up. 28% of Gen Z and millennials only want to buy from companies whose values they support. Fashion also got the message and is reacting. Why do you think greenwashing became such a huge thing? Almost every brand these days has a greener collection. And even though their sustainability claims are way blown out of proportion, they are making some real differences that actually are making an impact. Take H&M, for example. Huge company, produces quite an unsustainable way, exploits their workers, and their conscious line, a product can already be a part of that if 50% of the materials is more sustainable, which means that it's either organic cotton or recycled materials. And these are a lot more sustainable materials. That's really good. But yeah, the total part of their collection that is actually made of, for instance, organic cotton is very small. But because they produce on such a huge scale, they're actually the largest producers of organic cotton in the world. And it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been buying their conscious collection, if we hadn't been pushing these brands to become more sustainable. After all, 5 years ago, don't know if you've seen it, but the conscious collections were really small, quite expensive. And if you saw them, it's actually just a few green t-shirts with a tree on them. So yeah, that's disappointing, but because people actually bought these collections and kept on pushing brands to become more sustainable, the conscious collections and sustainable collections everywhere are now really big and actually have thousands of products that are actually fashionable and that people want to wear. Another example of how our shopping habits are actually making a difference is when you look at the secondhand industry. The secondhand industry has gone in the last few years from uncool and a little bit gross to hot and happening. And it's actually not a surprise if you think about it, because millennials and Gen Z were looking for more sustainable options. And, well, secondhand is a lot more sustainable since you're actually buying something that hasn't been produced especially for you. And yeah, that's a lot more sustainable. But what's most important here is that it's also really cheap. Because, yeah, most of us are a little bit scared off by the higher prices of sustainable fashion. So, yeah, secondhand is a really great place to start. And when big platforms made it super easy to shop out of the wardrobe of everybody who was willing to sell, the market exploded. Now, the secondhand market is growing 11 times as fast as conventional retail and is expected to be twice as big as fast fashion by 2030. And this wouldn't have been happening if we all wouldn't have been buying secondhand fashion. I don't think there's anybody in this room that hasn't bought secondhand fashion at least once. And because of you, we're actually changing this market and making it a lot better. So, by us all trying to be a little bit more sustainable, we can make real changes. You don't have to do it perfectly, but be vocal about it and take as many people with you as you can. After all, going thrift shopping is a lot more fun when you do it with friends, as is going to a protest or starting a more sustainable diet. It's not a coincidence that most of my friends are vegetarians that use green energy and that are also, of course, buying sustainable fashion. Peer pressure is a wonderful tool when used for good. And yes, of course, it's still quite hard sometimes to make the more sustainable option. I mean, most shopping streets still, well, have almost none or just none secondhand shops. Sustainable brands are not really in the high streets, but as most problems in a growing market, there's an app for that. We have apps these days that help you shop secondhand, apps that help you find clothing repair shops in your neighborhood, and apps that help you restyle everything you already own in your own wardrobe. It's also a reason why we started our platform, because we just wanted to make it easier for people that wanted to buy more sustainable brands and that just didn't know how. So just by making your own footprint on the fashion industry smaller, you're also making the footprint smaller of other people. And the more people that join in, the more the market grows sustainable. And yeah, of course, we're not the only ones responsible. You also have companies and governments that need to do their part. But if we all say that we're sick of greenwashing, governments will react. The EU right now is working on legislation that actually will combat greenwashing. And they already passed a law that keeps companies responsible for everything that happens in their whole supply chain. So with governments leveling the playing field and us making all more sustainable choices, such as buying from sustainable brands, shopping secondhand, keeping brands accountable, and just buying less and wearing what we own, we can really be a force to be reckoned with and change the fashion industry for good. Thank you very much.